Preparing for a solutions engineering at DigitalOcean interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 20 key questions you're likely to face. For each question you'll see a sample answer followed by the key points to cover. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. How would you discover a customer's technical requirements before recommending a DigitalOcean solution? I start by understanding the business outcome, not by presenting products. I ask about workload type, traffic patterns, reliability targets, compliance needs, team expertise, budget, and migration deadlines. Then I map current pain points to measurable success criteria, such as lower latency or reduced operational effort. I validate assumptions with a simple architecture discussion and summarize requirements back to the customer. That prevents premature recommendations and builds trust before discussing Droplets, managed databases, Kubernetes, or networking. While answering, focus on business goals, current architecture, workloads, constraints, success metrics, budget, security requirements, stakeholder priorities, and clarifying questions that separate symptoms from root problems. Question 2. How would you recommend a DigitalOcean architecture for a growing web application? For a growing web application, I would begin with stateless services on Droplets or App Platform behind a load balancer. I would place relational data in managed databases, user uploads in spaces, and use caching where read traffic justifies it. I would enable backups, monitoring, alerts, and automated deployments from the beginning. As demand grows, I would scale horizontally and introduce Kubernetes only when operational complexity is justified. The design should remain simple, observable, and cost-conscious. Make sure to cover stateless application design, load balancing, managed databases, object storage, caching, backups, monitoring, DNS, availability targets, scaling triggers, and a practical phased architecture. Question 3. When would you recommend DigitalOcean App Platform instead of Kubernetes? I recommend App Platform when the customer wants to deploy standard web services quickly without managing cluster control planes, node upgrades, or networking details. It is especially effective for small teams, predictable application patterns, and rapid iteration. Kubernetes becomes appropriate when teams need custom controllers, advanced scheduling, multi-service platform capabilities, or portability across environments. I would not position Kubernetes as automatically more mature. I would match operational complexity to business requirements and the customer's ability to support it. In your answer, discuss developer experience, operational ownership, deployment complexity, customization, portability, workload maturity, scaling needs, team skills, and the trade-off between convenience and control. Question 4. How would you migrate a customer's application to DigitalOcean with minimal downtime? I would inventory application dependencies, data stores, integrations, DNS, and operational procedures before moving anything. Next, I would build a representative staging environment and test performance, security, and recovery. For the database, I would use replication or a controlled export strategy, then perform a short final synchronization during cutover. DNS changes would have a reduced TTL, and I would define health checks, rollback criteria, and ownership in advance. After migration, I would monitor closely and verify business workflows. Be sure to mention discovery, dependency mapping, database replication, staging, DNS planning, rollback strategy, validation, incremental traffic shifting, backups, maintenance windows, and customer communication. Question 5. How do you explain cloud pricing and cost optimization to a customer? I explain cost using the customer's actual workload rather than quoting isolated resource prices. I estimate compute, storage, database, backups, bandwidth, and growth, then identify assumptions clearly. I look for oversized instances, idle resources, inefficient storage, unnecessary data transfer, and over-provisioned development environments. I recommend budgets, alerts, cleanup policies, and periodic reviews. Cost optimization should not blindly minimize spend. It should balance reliability, performance, engineering time, and predictable forecasting. Focus on workload-based estimation, predictable versus variable costs, resource utilization, storage and transfer charges, right-sizing, reserved commitments where applicable, tagging, budgets, alerts, and performance cost trade-offs. Question 6. A customer says their DigitalOcean application is slow. How would you troubleshoot it? I would first define slow, which endpoint, users, region, time period, and latency percentile. Then I would inspect monitoring for CPU, memory, disk, network, database connections, query latency, and error rates. Distributed tracing or application logs can separate application, database, and external service delays. I would check recent deployments and reproduce the issue under realistic load. Remediation might include query indexing, caching, connection pooling, instance resizing, or horizontal scaling, followed by measurement to confirm improvement. Cover symptom clarification, metrics, latency breakdown, application profiling, database performance, resource saturation, network behavior, caching, recent changes, reproducibility, and a data-driven remediation plan. Question 7. How would you design for high availability on DigitalOcean? I translate high availability into explicit RTO and RPO targets first. Application instances should be replicated across availability zones or failure domains where supported, placed behind a load balancer, and designed to remain stateless. Data requires a separate strategy using managed replication, backups, and tested restoration. I would monitor dependencies, automate health checks, document failover procedures, and run recovery exercises. High availability is not merely duplicate servers, it includes operations, data protection, and validated failure behavior. Mention redundancy across failure domains, load balancing, health checks, stateless services, database replication, backups, recovery objectives, monitoring, failover testing, and avoiding single points of failure. Question 8. What is your approach to securing a customer's DigitalOcean environment? I begin with least privilege and a clear trust boundary. I use SSH keys rather than shared passwords, restrict firewall rules, keep databases on private networks, and separate administrative access from public traffic. Secrets belong in a secure management process, not source code or images. I enable encryption, patch regularly, monitor logs and access, and protect backups. Finally, I map controls to the customer's compliance obligations and explain residual risk instead of promising absolute security. In your answer, include least privilege, SSH key management, firewalls, private networking, secrets handling, patching, encryption, backups, monitoring, vulnerability management, and compliance-specific controls. Question 9. How would you handle a customer's objection that DigitalOcean lacks the breadth of a hyperscale cloud? I would acknowledge that hyperscalers offer broader service catalogs, then ask which capabilities are truly required rather than debating feature counts. Many customers value DigitalOcean's simpler experience, transparent pricing, approachable support, and strong core infrastructure for their workloads. If a needed capability is absent, I would identify a practical integration or recommend another platform honestly. Credibility matters more than forcing a fit. My goal is to show where DigitalOcean creates the best overall outcome, including engineering productivity. Be sure to acknowledge the concern, clarify required capabilities, compare operational simplicity and product fit, identify gaps honestly, discuss integrations, migration flexibility, and avoid making unsupported competitive claims. Question 10. How would you demonstrate DigitalOcean to a technical customer during a proof of concept? I would define the proof of concept around measurable acceptance criteria, deployment time, latency, throughput, recovery behavior, security controls, and monthly cost. I would use a representative workload rather than a toy demo, automate provisioning and deployment, and capture baseline results for comparison. During the session, I would let the customer operate the environment themselves. At the end, I would review evidence against each criterion, document gaps, and recommend the next production step only if the results support it. Discuss success criteria, representative workload, baseline measurements, limited scope, reproducibility, deployment automation, observability, security validation, cost tracking, stakeholder feedback, and a clear decision framework. Question 11. How would you explain the difference between Droplets, App Platform, Kubernetes, and serverless-style services? Droplets provide virtual machines and maximum operating system control, so the customer manages more infrastructure. App Platform abstracts deployment and runtime operations for common application patterns. Kubernetes provides a powerful orchestration layer, but the team assumes more platform responsibility and complexity. Serverless-style services abstract servers further and suit event-driven or bursty workloads. I choose based on required control, workload shape, team maturity, and operational budget, not on the assumption that the highest abstraction is always best. Focus on abstraction level, infrastructure ownership, deployment model, customization, scaling, operational burden, workload fit, team capability, and the consequences of choosing too much or too little control. Question 12. Describe how you would troubleshoot a Kubernetes deployment that repeatedly crashes. I would inspect pod status, events, container logs, previous logs, restart counts, and deployment history first. Crash loop backoff could result from an application exception, missing secret, failed dependency, bad probe, or insufficient resources. I would compare the manifest with a known good version, verify image and configuration values, and check scheduling and service connectivity. After identifying the cause, I would apply the smallest safe fix, test it in staging, and roll back if production health worsens. Mention pod status, events, logs, probes, resource limits, image and configuration errors, secrets, networking, scheduling, dependency failures, rollback, and a systematic hypothesis-driven process. Question 13. How would you design a backup and disaster recovery strategy for a DigitalOcean customer? I would start by defining acceptable data loss and recovery time with the customer. Then I would protect databases, object storage, configuration, images, and infrastructure definitions using scheduled backups, appropriate retention, and geographic separation when required. Backups must be encrypted and access controlled, but that is only half the solution. I would regularly restore into an isolated environment, validate application consistency, measure recovery time, and maintain a runbook. Replication improves availability. Tested backups provide recoverability. Cover RPO, RTO, backup scope, retention, geographic separation, database consistency, encryption, restoration testing, runbooks, application dependencies, and the distinction between backups and high availability. Question 14. How do you communicate a complex cloud architecture to a non-technical executive? I lead with the business problem and expected outcome, faster releases, fewer outages, or lower operating cost. I use a simple diagram showing users, application services, data, and protection layers, then explain each component in business terms. I quantify assumptions and call out risks, trade-offs, and investment. I avoid acronyms unless I define them, while keeping deeper technical evidence available for engineering stakeholders. The executive should leave understanding the decision, value, and remaining uncertainty. In your answer, emphasize business outcomes, simple diagrams, risk and cost framing, measurable benefits, assumptions, decision points, technical depth on demand, and avoiding unnecessary jargon. Question 15. Tell me about a time you influenced a customer or stakeholder without direct authority. In one engagement, a team wanted to migrate immediately, but their backup process had never been tested. I did not block the project. I demonstrated a restoration exercise and quantified the outage risk. Together, we added a short validation phase, documented ownership, and scheduled the migration afterward. The cutover succeeded without data loss, and the team adopted restoration testing as a regular practice. That experience reinforced that influence comes from evidence, empathy, and proposing a workable path forward. Make sure to structure the response with situation, technical and business context, stakeholder concerns, evidence, collaboration, compromise, measurable outcome, and a lesson about influence. Question 16. How would you respond when a customer asks for a feature DigitalOcean does not currently provide? I would first clarify the outcome behind the feature request and determine whether an existing capability, API, integration, or architectural change solves it. If not, I would explain the limitation directly, outline practical alternatives, and discuss their operational and cost implications. I would capture the use case for the appropriate internal team without promising delivery dates I cannot control. Customers usually accept constraints when communication is honest, options are concrete, and their feedback visibly informs future decisions. Discuss clarifying the underlying need, validating urgency, proposing alternatives, documenting limitations, involving product or support teams, setting expectations, and preserving trust through transparent communication. Question 17. How would you automate infrastructure provisioning and application delivery for a DigitalOcean customer? I would define infrastructure as code using a version-controlled workflow, with reviewed changes and separate environments. Provisioning should create networking, compute, databases, access controls, and monitoring consistently. CI/CD would run tests, build immutable artifacts, deploy progressively, and support rollback. Secrets must come from protected stores rather than repository files, and state requires secure, shared management. I would also detect drift and document recovery procedures. Automation reduces variation, but only when the pipeline itself is tested and governed. Cover infrastructure as code, version control, review workflows, CI/CD, immutable changes, secrets, environment separation, testing, state management, rollback, drift detection, and auditability. Question 18. How would you evaluate whether a workload belongs on DigitalOcean? I evaluate the workload against functional and non-functional requirements, compute shape, latency, regions, storage, database behavior, availability, compliance, integrations, and support expectations. I compare those needs with DigitalOcean's services, pricing, operational model, and documented limits. I also estimate migration effort and the customer's ability to operate the design. A good recommendation includes explicit gaps and mitigations. If the fit is poor, I would say so. Long-term trust is more valuable than a short-term win. Mention workload requirements, geography, compliance, performance, integrations, operational skills, cost model, service availability, migration effort, support expectations, and a balanced fit versus gap assessment. Question 19. What metrics would you use to prove that a proposed cloud architecture is successful? I choose metrics that connect technical performance to customer outcomes. Reliability includes availability, error rate, and recovery time. Performance includes latency percentiles and throughput. Operational measures include deployment frequency, lead time, alert quality, and support effort. Financial measures might be cost per active user or transaction, not just total spend. I establish baselines before implementation, set target thresholds, and review results after launch. The architecture succeeds when it improves the customer's business without creating unacceptable risk. Be sure to include reliability, latency, throughput, deployment frequency, recovery objectives, security findings, resource utilization, cost per workload, support burden, and business-specific success measures. Question 20. Why do you want to be a solutions engineer at DigitalOcean? I am drawn to solutions engineering because it combines technical problem solving with customer impact. DigitalOcean's focus on making cloud infrastructure approachable resonates with how I work. Understand the real constraint, design a practical solution, and explain it clearly. I enjoy helping developers and growing teams adopt reliable infrastructure without unnecessary complexity. My background in cloud architecture, troubleshooting, automation, and stakeholder communication would let me contribute across discovery, proofs of concept, adoption, and long-term customer success. In your answer, connect customer empathy, technical breadth, cloud infrastructure, developer experience, clear communication, practical architecture, DigitalOcean's target customers, and specific evidence from your background. If you are still with us, congratulations. You are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.